Welcome to the School Leadership Show. I'm Mike Dowdy. This is the only podcast dedicated to helping practicing and aspiring school leaders realize their potential, advance their careers, and achieve work-life balance. We bring together the greatest minds from inside and outside of education to deliver you the insights and tools you need to succeed in school leadership. This is the show we wish we had 20 years ago. This show is about you. We're here to help you become the best school leader you can be while still having a life outside of work. Today we're talking with educator and author Cheryl Dobbertin about how school leaders can support teaching and learning in their buildings. With public debate over standards, curriculum, and assessment at an unprecedented and fevered pitch, we get into how administrators can manage all of the competing interests while still focusing on good instruction. Enjoy this one with Cheryl Dobbertin. I'm here with Cheryl Dobbertin, and we're going to learn a little bit about her books and her current work related to Common Core, specifically in teaching and learning in general, right?
Correct.
Excellent. So could you tell us a little bit about how you've gotten to where you are, and a little bit about maybe your background, your experiences that have led you up to what you're working on now?
Great, sure. So I think the first thing to know about me that as an educator that's important is I didn't start out to be an educator. I started out to be a journalist, and my undergraduate work was in journalism at Syracuse University. So I got really involved in learning to write well and excited about that as a career path. But once I got into it, I found out I was incredibly lonely, and I wasn't sure that I was doing anything that made a difference in the world. And so I started doing a variety of public relations jobs, and I ended up working at a Catholic high school. And I got to spend a lot of time with the students, and just found myself really drawn to this idea of teaching. And the woman who supervised me, the nun who supervised me, was fantastic. And she said, "If you're interested in teaching, why don't you teach here?" And they gave me the chance to teach religion, which I know is kind of funny if you know me. But that was sort of like my dip into teaching that made me convinced that actually what I needed to do was be a teacher. And so I just went back to school and got my master's in education. And I've taught here locally, in fact, with you, Mike, at Churchville Chili, which also really shaped me because when I started teaching, we were very, very invested in the full inclusion movement and this idea that you could teach all kids in one classroom. And when I started teaching, it just was. It wasn't even anything we questioned. It was just what we were doing. And got the opportunity to work with co-teaching partners a lot, which broadened my perspective and helped me understand more about all the possibilities of teaching, and really committed me to this idea that you absolutely can teach all kids in one classroom, and just with some additional thought and some strategy, that could actually be a really great experience for kids. Did you have a question?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I love being a teacher, but what I found out about being a teacher that I liked the most was designing work, really getting kids working. I got such satisfaction from, thinking about an activity that I wanted them to do and what they were supposed to get out of it, and then watch that happen. I almost had this experimental stance toward that. Well, what if I asked them to do this? What if I asked them to do that? And so I got the opportunity to start talking to other people about that. Here I am in this inclusive classroom thinking about curriculum and instruction in a really different way. And here's kind of the results. Here's what kids are doing. Look, here's student work. Here's a tape of my kids. Do you see how this maybe looks different than your classroom? And that led me very kind of accidentally into this professional development work at first. Which I just loved. And I got an opportunity to go to the University of Virginia to hear Carol Tomlinson talk. And I think because I was one of the few secondary teachers in her audience at that time, something about my questions or whatever caught her eye, and she and I ended up talking together, and she gave me the chance to do some work for her, writing differentiated curriculum, which then I feel like that set me up for just this whole different level of interactions and experiences with people I wouldn't have met any other way. I started working as a professional development coach at the Monroe II BOCES, and that was a huge learning experience about different systems and how different schools look different from each other, and meeting different cultures and how to work within a variety of cultures. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity to work across school systems and to think about what that meant to me as an educator and the kind of person I needed to be to make myself a good fit in all kinds of different places.
And you really get the appreciation for what the importance of the context, the local context.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I call it culture, but context is just as right of a word. It's fun. It's fun how you can walk into a new building and listen to teachers talk and talk to the administrators and look at kids and suddenly see you're in a different place than you were yesterday, and it's neat. And then the best thing ever happened to me. I was presenting at a conference, and a gentleman came up to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to tell you about this place I work, Expeditionary Learning." And I'd actually learned about Expeditionary Learning when I was doing my admin work and achieving my admin certification. One of our jobs was to write a charter school application. And
I took that class
I
too.
know. Everybody takes it. And I actually researched and found Expeditionary Learning then and I made up a plan for an Expeditionary Learning school. So, but I'd never actually met any humans who actually worked for Expeditionary Learning until that moment. And that led to a position as a coach with Expeditionary Learning, which has, what that did for me is it made me realize that all my instincts, all of my beliefs about education and the way school could be were possible. Because I walked into Expeditionary Learning schools and I saw those things actually happening on a regular, daily basis. And
what kinds of things?
Yeah, cool things. Okay, that's such a good question, Mike. First of all, that kids were the drivers of their learning. So you literally saw kids designing and moving toward some authentic product that they thought would serve some purpose in the world. There's just 100 different examples of really good student work that comes out of this idea that kids are like, oh, we can fix that. Oh, we can make this better. Oh, we can help this group of people. And sure, this isn't actually happening by accident. It's the conditions for this to happen are created by teachers. And the background that kids would need to be exposed to think about those problems is absolutely crafted by teachers. But the kids seem not to know that. So it's amazing to see them, pushing hard to make something great that's going to change the world for somebody else. And then, of course, what's happening in that is they're applying all of their skills, all their reading skills, all their writing skills, all their mathematical skills, their scientific knowledge, their capacity to understand different cultures and history. And so they're learning so deeply. And, you never hear a kid in an Expeditionary Learning school be like, oh, I have to go to school. They're driven to get there because all of that work is happening in service of other people. And then the other part of Expeditionary Learning, which is so important, is the adult culture and the way the grown-ups work together and the way teachers work together and support each other and the way teachers and administrators are on a team trying to create something amazing.
So when you think about some of the most effective schools that you've been in, or some of the schools where students are doing some of the best work that you've seen, what is it that the administrators are doing that is making that happen?
Mm-hmm. I think about this a lot, actually. So there's two things I think administrators are doing in these great schools. One is they're setting the bar. They are claiming an educational vision. They write it down and they say, this is what we're doing here. And if you want to do it, we'd love to have you. And if you don't want to do it, that's okay. Go be a great teacher somewhere else. But this is what we're doing here. And you have to be on board with that vision to be part of that system. And then they create the conditions for teachers to actually do that great work. So adequate planning time, adequate resources. It doesn't mean they're wealthy. It doesn't mean it's off the chain, but they organize their systems so that those things can come true. So here's a really practical example. Teachers in Expeditionary Learning schools work in grade level teams. Well, that means they have grade level team meetings. Like there's no sort of like, oh, we wish we could do that for you, but we can't. It's, if this is the way we're going to do things, this is the way we're going to do things. And administrators commit to the structures that make those things possible. And they're clear-eyed about, we can't sacrifice this. We have to have these things. And it might mean they sacrifice some other things, but they don't sacrifice the things that lead to their vision.
So when you think about some of those non-negotiables, that common planning time is a big one.
Yeah.
What else?
Time for teachers to learn. So we expect teachers to, create these great opportunities for kids. So that means they have to be out in the community researching. That means perhaps, and this happens in some of our schools, teachers need to travel overseas and actually see the ancient canals because they're going to teach their kids about canals before they help their kids understand the importance of a waterway in their town. It means they support disciplinary systems that are restorative as opposed to leading kids out of classrooms, because every time a kid's absent from the experience, those things can't be replicated. It means finding and holding on to and satisfying teachers who are totally willing to work 60 hours a week to be part of this system. But then make sure they're taking care of themselves too, so they don't get burned out and want to go. There's a huge list. It also sometimes means sort of standing up for or against factors that might keep teachers from believing that they can get this work done well. So one example is kids in expeditionary learning schools actually do really well on standardized tests. It seems counterintuitive because you don't see a lot of test prep going on. People are worried, like, oh gosh, how are they going to do on the test this year? They always do well. And let's align principles hold. No, we're not going to sacrifice time for this great, activity over here to do work in the workbook. We're going to believe that what we're doing is going to lead kids to what they need on these tests. That's a conversation I hear our principals having all the time, because teachers hear this message of like, oh, you should be getting your kids ready, Our principals hold that line.
Well, and they are getting them ready.
Well, exactly,
Right.
But not in the way that others might feel they need to be getting ready.
It's a fabulous segue, by the way. So we're in an unprecedented time, particularly in New York State, when I can't remember in my 20 years in education where there's ever been such a public and polarizing conversation about standards and curriculum. And you kind of started out talking about how that was one of the things that you gravitated toward in your early education career, toward curriculum, toward standards. What do you think about this? And is this atmosphere going to last? Where are we?
Yeah, it's interesting that you're asking this question right now today, because just yesterday I was talking with teachers about three things: standards, curriculum, and testing. For most people in the general public, they've become one issue, the Common Core. But for teachers in the classroom, they aren't one issue. And now what I hear teachers saying is, I actually really like the standards. I'm pretty excited about the curriculum I'm developing or using. I'm terrified about testing. And I actually feel like in school, they're starting to get this clarity actually about what they want to preserve out of this movement and what they really wish would change out of this movement. And I feel like what I'm hearing from educators is, please, God, don't let this lead to a change in standards. We have made a difference. We have raised the bar. I do feel like I'm teaching my kids more than ever before, and kids are doing it. And please, God, don't make me go through the challenge of, again, redesigning my curriculum. I'm trying so hard to get what I have. Great. But the pressure under which people are being asked to take these risks and, experiment, as I said earlier, sort of like figure out what kids are going to respond to and not respond to, is just not the way you can create change. I think people also don't realize that these are two separate movements. And so standards and curriculum movement is being led by the New York State Education Department, or education departments in general. And this testing movement is being led by the governor. And people think Albany, they think there's this cohesive whole...
One big monolith.
And it's not.
No.
These are two different camps operating under two different systems of belief.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because we were both coming of age as teachers in the mid-'90s, where there was a standards movement in the mid-'90s. Mm-hmm. And there certainly wasn't the hue and cry. And then we went after, in New York State, again, the standards in 2005. And they just kind of rolled out, and it happened. And we've been testing right along. Mm-hmm. And then, it seems like every 10 years we go after those standards again. And it's hard to argue against higher standards.
Yeah.
I mean, think when they raise safety standards in cars, nobody complains.
Yeah.
When you go from lap belts to shoulder belts to airbags.
But the designers of cars are not being held accountable for when people die. Right? That's the difference.
Great
right?
point.
So now all of a sudden you want half of my evaluation to rest in the messy business of how my kids did on a test. A bunch of kids, by the way, who are getting a message that tests don't matter and this is stupid and you shouldn't have to. So that to me is actually the fulcrum on which the dichotomy is really occurring.
So we're talking to aspiring and practicing school leaders who have to navigate these waters. And I can't imagine going back to being an elementary school principal with the way things are now. And then I think also it's scaring some people away from even going into school leadership. So what are they supposed to do?
Yeah. The thing that's hard about that question is what you probably needed to do to be okay in this moment probably needed to happen about 5 years ago in your building. So seriously, because if you've laid down a culture of trust and safety in your school and this happened, you're okay. Like you have a way to talk to people. There's a feeling that, of mutual respect and relational trust that's going to carry folks through this.
We're in this together.
Exactly.
We're going to get through this.
Yeah, but if you haven't done that and you're here, there's fear and there's blaming and there's, and so this just is actually creating some of the tension. So all I can say is every school leader sets the temperature of their building. They create the culture. They set the expectations. They help teachers understand how they will and won't react to outside stress. And that is something that comes over time with trust and, consistent behavior and messaging.
And you've been in many schools.
Absolutely.
And you've probably seen school leaders have a very positive influence and a very negative influence.
Yeah.
And what are some of the real practical things that you've found that school leaders have done? Like maybe they haven't gotten their building to that point yet, but they're trying.
Yeah.
And they're moving in the right direction. What are some of the things that they're doing?
Yeah. So I think when this kind of culture is being built, what's happening is that school leaders are doing what they say they're going to do, whatever that is. Like, okay, guys, this is what we're working toward. And so then teachers see school leaders taking those steps and moving in that direction, and it's consistent and it's with integrity. And when that happens, people feel safe. When people don't feel safe is when it's like, oh, this is what we're going to do. Oh, no, sorry, this is what we're going to do. Oops, sorry, this is what we're going to do. And people are feeling sort of battered. And then they don't feel like there's a captain at the helm. They just feel like we're just, especially when those school leaders say kind of dumb things like, well, the state's making me do this, or the superintendent's making me do this. When a leader says, I'm actually not in control, that somebody's making me do things, that's when I think teachers feel the most vulnerable. Another thing I think that could either be great or not great is the thoughtfulness with which anything is rolled out or anything is done. So here's a really concrete example. The modules, which I'm pretty intimately related to. The dirty word
in some school districts.
In some school districts, but not all. There are many, many school districts who have used that resource in a way that is helping kids learn and helping teachers learn and people feel satisfied with them. And the big differentiator was, I saw three sort of ways to roll out the modules. One was, hey, you guys, we've been trying to do this Common Core work. This is a resource. We should look really carefully at it. Who's willing to pilot? Who's willing to talk about what they're seeing with kids? I'll support you all the way. I'll give you, you can have all the resources you need. I'll give you feedback. We'll make a decision together 2 years from now about what this really means for us. 2 was something in the middle, which was sort of like, hey guys, we don't have a Common Core line curriculum. We really need one. We're gonna use these modules, but I'm really interested in what you need to do with them in order to make them effective for kids. So we're gonna have lots of time and conversation about that. And
right.
3,
the okay plan now is better than
right.
the
No
perfect
plan. Right.
in 2 years.
And people realized they couldn't have no plan, right? So to credit, you have to do something. Where this went off the chain and became a conversation at so many levels was adopt the modules with fidelity. Without a definition of what adopt the modules with fidelity even means.
Where did that come from?
I have no idea. Well, actually, I've heard from some educators that when reading first came in, there was a lot of conversation about about in order to be actually research based, you had to do something with fidelity. And so there became this lexicon among teachers and administrators about if we're going to do research based, we have to have fidelity. And then so somehow they got attached to this, do this with fidelity. So I just love this chance to say this to your audience, Mike. I say, fine, adopt the modules with the fidelity to the Common Core, right?
To the standards.
Yeah, to the standards,
Yep.
to the shifts. If you insist on fidelity, that's fine. But adopting anything to well, it says 5 minutes, and so I'm going to keep my kids working or stop my kids working after 5 minutes because it says 5 minutes is educational insanity. So, and that is an example of teachers feeling like, you said fidelity, I'm giving you fidelity, this is junk, and my kids aren't learning, but I'm doing what you said, and that creates this tremendous distrust.
Well, and where's the fidelity to the culture
Yeah.
and to the local context?
Yeah.
And at what point did we remove teacher judgment from this? I mean, we're talking about really highly trained and intelligent folks in the field, and all of a sudden they're not overnight.
Well, but I think some administrators felt like actually they didn't have highly trained folks, and that perhaps they were facing a lot of resistance to change, and that this was something they could do to force the issue. And so that was a strategy, I think, on some people's parts. Not a blind spot, but just, all right, I've tried everything else. I'm going to try this.
Here's a lever I can...
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
Huh. So I want to kind of change gears here, or change course a little bit here, and talk about, where can people learn more about your work and your books and get to know the stuff that you're working on.
Yeah. Writing my book, Common Core Unit by Unit, was a great experience for me because it invited me to capture everything I really believed about education at this moment and put it in a book. And I feel like anybody who reads that book, which you can get on Amazon or from Heinemann directly, you would have such a clear-eyed picture of my beliefs and what I could bring to a system. One thing that it makes me sad is when people call and say, "Hey, I saw your book, and will you come in and do a keynote on XYZ?" And I think you didn't actually read the book, did you? Like, they don't actually understand what I stand for or what I care about. But that's a starting place. It's easy to find out about me as an educator and my beliefs and what I might be doing if I was invited to work with your system from reading the book. And then, actually, I'm easy to Google. It's a silly thing to say. I don't have a website or anything, but if you just Google me, you will see quite a bit of articles I've written, blogs I've written, other podcasts that I've done. I'm pretty present. I'm out there. And then the third thing I would ask people to do is just ask around. Have you ever worked with Cheryl? Do you know Cheryl? Because I have done a lot of work locally, especially here in the Rochester area, and it's easy for people to say, like, "Oh yeah, I know Cheryl," and make those connections to me.
Very cool. So I want to end with a 3, 2, 1 here. So here we've touched on this a little bit, but if you had, what are your top 3 pieces of advice for aspiring administrators? So folks who are, either thinking about or just getting ready to go into their first administrative gig, what would you tell them?
Yeah. Pay as much attention as you can to the structures that allow for good instruction to happen. It's easy to just pay attention to good instruction, but if you don't dig into the conditions that make good instruction happen, you'll be missing part of what you can do as a leader. Pay attention to parents and the messages they're sending you about how you're being perceived. I had some learning to do there about things that I was saying and doing that were unintentionally sending the wrong message, and I had some learning to do about myself with that one. And then form a team, form a community. Especially if you're working in a small school where you don't necessarily have a bunch of administrators around you, you need to talk with other administrators, a lot. And you need to test your thinking, and you need to get feedback, and that's not always easy to do in your own system.
All right. Now, part of the purpose of this podcast is to give people really practical support and tips that they can implement right away. So, you've worked with lots of administrators in lots of different schools. What are 2 habits that you've either mastered yourself as an administrator or you've seen others grab hold of that really helped them be productive, help them be both efficient and effective?
Get out of your office, get out of your office, get out of your office.
Okay, that's 3.
It's so hard. It's so hard. The draw to, and this is, again, something that I really had to get my head wrapped around. The draw, the pile of work that is sitting there, the emails, the forms, all that junk. So you can easily give days and days over to that and never once actually, see teaching and learning happen. And I've seen lots and lots of systems that people use. They carve out blocks of time. They say I'm only answering emails between here and here. Whatever the system is, and find it, employ it, and use it. You cannot be a good leader unless you're in the building. And the other thing that this may be unique, and this is something that I feel like has been a value add in my work lately, is when I work with administrators, like when I'm trying to help administrators learn about the Common Core, we do it as often as we can by actually being in classrooms. And so instead of having a workshop or a full day workshop with administrators, I'll come in and talk about, some things we should be seeing. We'll look at standards. We'll make predictions. So what would we think we would see if we went into an English teacher's classroom right now? And then we go look for that
Go
thing.
see if you see it.
Yeah, it's, and I know
How novel, Cheryl.
I know, but people actually have been, I was with a group last week that I really actually enjoyed a ton. And, one of the principals said, this like nirvana, like this is the best professional development I've ever had, because then I got to talk to them about what they were seeing, and they were able to hear my perspective on it, which of course was the learning for them. And it was really powerful. So how do you join forces to make the work you have to do also a learning experience?
And the work you want to do,
yeah,
the work you went into the business to do.
Exactly right.
All right, and my one here, how about what's one experience during your K-12 schooling that shaped your perspective on teaching and learning?
Yeah, this is so easy for me to name. I had an amazing high school English teacher, actually, who a lot of people know, Sue Meyer. She became a great administrator. She's a great leader. But her interaction with me that was so important, and actually is something now I look for in every teacher I encounter, was not to only respond to my skills. So not to only be like, you're good at this, with this writing thing, you should think about this, but to respond to me as a person and to understand, what I needed as a young adolescent to have the confidence to do probably what I was meant to do in the world. And so there's this moment where we had to write poems or something, and this was an AP class, so it's kind of high stakes, and she's going to read the poems out loud to the class. And I don't even know if she was as deliberate in her choice of words at this moment as I thought that she was, but she took my poem out of the pile and she said, listen to what this author has to say. And she called me an author right in front of all these other kids. And this is such a crystallizing moment in my development as a person. Like, I can be an author. I will be an author. And so this whole child thing is so just incredibly real about teachers. If you're just there to talk about chemistry or to tell stories about history, and you're not in it because there's kids there in front of you, please don't be a teacher. There's other careers for people who are passionate about content. You got to be passionate about kids, and you have to see kids as people. And that's that. I lived it. It changed me, and I cannot not pay attention to it when I'm in school.
Cheryl Dobbertin, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
And to learn more about you, you are Googleable.
Yes. Yep. Or you can www.booksforteachers.com is my at gmail.com.
Okay. So you're gonna put it right out there if people want to contact you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the School Leadership Show, a podcast for aspiring and practicing school leaders by school leaders. Send your comments, questions, and show ideas to theschoolleadershipshow@gmail.com.